names joining us, and I think we'll get started. My name is Orit Kalman. I'm a senior facilitator with SAC State Consensus and Collaboration Programs, and with me supporting the meeting is my colleague, Danica DeBow. And so if you have any technical issues, you can chat for if you need support. And today we're going to talk about the FloodMAR network and provide you with an update and share information about the process. And so today I'm kind of playing two roles as a facilitator, but also I'm going to present on this topic with my colleagues, Mike Antos and Marr. We've been teaming up together to work on this. It's been great fun. And so just a warning that once I start talking, there's no one checking in on the time today. So you'll have to let me know if I get so enthusiastic that I can't stop talking. Some remote participation instructions. We love seeing everyone's faces, but to help with bandwidth, once we do the presentations, have your video and audio off, and then we'll do the presentations. And after the presentation, we really welcome your feedback, questions, want to engage in a conversation. Jenny generally checks the chat panel for comments and questions to bring up afterwards. You can also use the hand raise. We'd love to hear your thoughts in person. And we have a couple of different Zoom poll questions just to connect with you on our hour together. And just as a reminder, this is meant to be a very informal gathering. It's an opportunity for us to share and learn from each other about various efforts to support FloodMAR related activities. And this is an opportunity for connecting, collaborating. So we hope you take advantage of our time together. And as we get started, just to see who's joining us together, I'll put a poll and just wanting to know perspective that you represent and the region that you primarily work in. So you should be able to see the poll right now, and love to hear who's joining us today. I'll give it a few more seconds so you can respond. We have different representations. For those who are stating other, feel free to include in the chat what other means to you. And I'll give it just a couple of seconds. A lot of different representations, different areas, statewide. Yeah, we should add statewide. All right, so here are the results. You can scroll down the gray bar on the right side if you want to see some of the responses that may not show up right away. Great. Well, welcome everyone. All right, so as I was saying, we have a presentation today to update you on the FloodMAR network. And in addition to this presentation, sharing about our process in advancing the network, really hope that this also provides with some helpful lessons and ideas, just more generally in terms of ways that we can think about collaboration, where we want to leverage information of individuals, their skills and their knowledge, and bringing that those individual skills and knowledge into a collective effort. And so hopefully, even though this is very much focused on the FloodMAR network, that you're able to see how this information and this process might apply elsewhere. And I would be curious to hear at the end of the presentation if you're making those connections to other network and collaborative work that you may be part of. And so, again, just very grateful to be working with Mike and Jenny. Mike provided a presentation about the network earlier in the fall, so he's going to provide a bit of just a recap of that. And at the end of the presentation about the process, Jenny's going to talk about next steps and where we hope to go with our work about the network. And so with that, I think I'll turn it over to you, Mike. Oh, we have a question for all of you, being that we're talking about a network. Do you consider yourself a member of a network? And so here's a question for you. Let us know where you land.
Well, this is the FloodMAR network.
The FloodMAR network.
Consider yourself a member of the FloodMAR network.
It's easy enough that hopefully everybody can play along. I'm just going to give it a few more seconds. All right. Here we go. So 19 of you are feeling that you have a commitment that you're a part of the FloodMAR network, and some of you are network curious. So we're excited to share information and hear from you at the end of the hour.
That's great. Nice to hear it. I want to give a shout out to my Santec colleague, Nicola, who's calling in from Italy, where it must be nearly midnight, where there's some interest in borrowing from the network efforts that we're taking on here with FloodMAR. So it's really exciting to have you.
Thanks a lot.
You want to take me to the next slide, Orit? There we go. So as many of you probably were around over the years now that FloodMAR has been forming, this idea of a FloodMAR network came out of the Research Advisory Committee. And some of you may have saw my presentation either at the 2-day convening that happened in the before times or earlier in the fall when I gave a talk to LunchMAR. But the idea is that the RAC, as they concluded their work, really listing and laying out the task list, the things that needed to be researched, the activities that needed to be undertaken to consider policy, to change questions about institutional structures, to develop partnerships, to learn what we needed to move forward with FloodMAR. As they made that list, among them, one of the things they realized is that being together as the RAC and coming together periodically from all their various different vantage points on the different pieces of the puzzle of FloodMAR was extraordinarily valuable to them as a group. That they, through that time, though they had a discrete mission of producing the strategies, they really found that getting together to share and to spark off of each other's diverse expertise and to benefit from the ebb and flow of effort and enthusiasm, that if you're part of a team, you don't always have to be the one with the most energy, right? You can really draft on your colleagues once in a while, just as they can draft off of you. Because FloodMAR is such an integrated idea, it requires a lot of players from different vantage points to bring their expertise forward in order to move it. And this is something that the RAC really noticed about itself, that beyond the work that it was doing, it really appreciated becoming the group. And in their report, it called for this production of the network to maintain those process benefits. And what's really exciting about having it be a network rather than kind of an organization, and we've always tried to align those two things as separate in our discussions about this, is that an organization often has its own mission and it needs resources and capacities and skills and it does its thing. And it may have partnerships, but it's got its own job to do. A network rather doesn't think that way. It thinks about how everyone's missions that wants to be involved are increased and improved by their participation. So rather than having its own mission of moving FloodMAR forward or achieving more water supply or whatever, the network idea is that by participating, everyone is strengthened. So all of the missions across all of the different participants are strengthened, and their missions get done more quickly and better. And so this is sort of where the network came from, and the organizing idea behind it is, how do we do this on purpose? And many of us probably are familiar with working in this mode informally, and across water management in California, there's informal networks all over the place, and we participate in them all the time. More and more, you start to see on the landscape of water management explicit networks, ones that are being designed from the ground up to support this activity. And so that's what we've been doing for the last year, I guess, maybe a little less than a year. And now I'm done talking about my slide, and Orit, I turn it over to you to take us to the next couple of pieces of content.
Great, thanks, Mike. Okay, so as Mike was saying, throughout this process, it's really been important for us to make that distinction between an organization and a network. So as we started developing a process and working through deciding what is it that the network is, and what will the network individuals as part of the network will be doing together. You know, we developed this process, and I think coming into it, it may at a quick glance look like a strategic planning effort. And we're all familiar with strategic planning of developing mission and vision and goals and objectives and such. But this process is really is a bit of an upside down kind of process where we don't have a structure within which that we're working. Instead, we were looking for the individual participants to really think through what it is that they're bringing to this conversation and what they're hoping to gain out of it. And that actually what it is, the things that we're looking to be doing together is what then drives the mission and the purpose of the network. And so starting with our first workshop in December, we came together to develop that shared purpose and what it is that the network will be doing collectively, and doing that by building on the participants who are coming together. We then followed that up at our just last month's workshop, and really thinking about how are we going to come together to work on specific initiatives. And with that, also thinking about what is the kind of structure a network will need to be sustainable and ensure that we can follow up on those initiatives and support the cohorts that are working on it. And that's going to lead into our next workshop later in the summer, June or July, where now that we've identified some initiatives that we want to move forward with, we want to see what kind of progress we can make in this time period between the two workshops, but also think about the kind of support we need for a network to make sure that it has longevity and that it's sustainable. And beyond that, we're all curious to see what the future will bring, and what participants in the network as a whole would want to do moving forward. And so this process, as you can see, is somewhat a messy process and an evolving process, in that there's a lot of going back and forth of thinking about what could be done, and then thinking about what we want to do, with always thinking about the question of, given that this network is an added effort to what people are doing in the day job, already doing to support FloodMAR and just on an ongoing basis, really thinking about what is the added value, what is the added benefit of having a network? How can the network support what is already being done out there? So I want to share with you our process at the two workshops so you can see the progression of the discussion, the narrative that we're telling. And the way that we've been doing these workshops is we're using a Miro platform. It's a collaborative platform that is based on creating frames that essentially are chapters in our network story. And it allows us to work on it together, brainstorm and identify ideas and think through the various questions and pieces. But as we move forward, we don't want to lose what has been done. So it also serves as a way to memorialize the conversations. So as the network moves forward, we can always come back to ideas that maybe we don't have at this moment the momentum and the energy to move on, but we all recognize that this is really important. So later on in the presentation, I'm going to share the link to a Miro board where we would love to get some of your input. And so just want to show you just a couple of things about this Miro board. It's quite a robust tool, but it can also be simple enough that anyone can just join at any time. And two things that you need to know about it is one is how would you navigate it? And as I said, it's set up with different frames. And there is a frame menu at the bottom left side of the board where if you click on that icon, you will see all the different frames that are available and you can click on any frame and go to it. And to add input, you can use sticky notes when you, there is on the left side a toolbar with all the different options. If you click on the sticky note, it gives you a palette of colors. You can pick the color you want and you can move the sticky to the frame and add information. So I'm just sharing that with you. So when you do get on a Miro board and provide input, you have just the most basic tools to go ahead and provide your thoughts. All right, so the first workshop that we got together, it's really was really about this shifting and focus from me, the work that I as an individual do, and thinking about it in the collective we. And so there were a couple of different parts at the first workshop that we focused on. One was really asking the question of what motivates us to be part of a network and what superpowers, what is it that we bring into it so we can leverage those skills and knowledge and connections and opportunity to work together as a network. And we use that to identify the shared narrative, the shared story of the network. And so that was the first part of the workshop. And then the second part of the workshop was really a brainstorming of what can a FloodMAR network do to advance FloodMAR project implementation. And so I want to share with you a little bit of the conversation. So in terms of developing a statement of purpose, those three questions that we asked: what are our superpowers and how can they be leveraged by the network? Why are we here? What motivates us to be part of the network? And what is our shared story of the FloodMAR network? And in answering the question, we were then able to get those key components of what could be our first draft of a statement of purpose. So we said, roles as a diverse group that brings together a range of perspective, and that could be in research, among NGOs, government agencies, engineers, economists, hydrologists, water resource managers, citizens, volunteers. With that in mind, we want to leverage our experiences and expertise to learn from each other, share information, connect ideas, collaborate, and develop shared partnerships. So these are individual motivation. And we do that for a shared vision so we can improve the collective work as we develop long-term tools, projects, body of knowledge, for multi-benefit integrated solutions that include flood management, groundwater sustainability, economic benefits, water resiliencies, and looking at it both community and regional and state level. So that was quite a bit of self-reflection that we all did as a group, and kind of thinking in visionary terms, in terms of what the network can accomplish. And then we shifted to thinking about what is it that needs to be done. And what I did here is I just pulled some of the stickies from the mirror board to just demonstrate that we just heard a lot of different ideas in terms of what a network could be doing. Here are some, just to highlight some examples. The ideas that came up were broad and had to do with recognizing the importance of outreach and transfer of knowledge, looking at identifying common project performance metrics and management indicators, so more specific things, thinking about web-based knowledge exchange, the importance of connecting people and places. And we had other kind of ideas that were more specific, such as convening grower practitioner workshops on how to do recharge, thinking about subsurface aquifer and geological models. And so a lot of different kinds of ideas. This was just a really broad brainstorming. And then we took that and sorted it into some key categories of potential activities that a network could be doing. And we came up with 5 key things. The 5 key categories that we ended up at the first workshop include identifying and filling knowledge gaps, and recognizing that this work had already begun with the Research Advisory Committee, creating a format and some kind of a process for sharing FloodMAR body of knowledge. And so really acknowledging the need for some kind of a structure to share information effectively. And this is not just how we share the knowledge, but what needs to be shared. There's just so much information out there. So just really sifting it and understanding what would be important to share is part of that category. Then we looked at 2 different kinds of outreach and communication. One, which is internal to the network. And so ongoing communication and expanding that knowledge within the network, but also recognizing the importance of communicating and doing external outreach to others who may be at the periphery of the network, but are quite important to FloodMAR efforts. And then the 5th one, of course, is the network is about supporting FloodMAR implementation efforts. And so there might be ways for the network to move forward with some initiatives related to that. And so this was the end of our first workshop. This is what we ended up with. And what we came into as we convened again for the second workshop. At the second workshop, now that we had 5 categories for what a network could be doing, which seems to be very much aligned with the recommendation of the RAC, we wanted to just pause and take stock of what is going on and what we can learn from ongoing work to help us really continue and refine what the network should be doing. So we did that by in 2 different ways. One, we had some pre-work, which I will share with you, and really trying to find the nexus between the RAC themes and recommendations and those network categories. We wanted to make sure that there's an alignment between the priorities set by the RAC and what the network can be doing as an added benefit, added value to that. We also checked in with some of our participants, asked to present on current efforts and asked them to weigh in on what they think based on their experience the network could be doing to improve the work that is being done out there. And then we use that information, the learning from the ongoing work, to then go back to those 5 categories and really step through those doors and think about, given these categories, which initiatives, what should we be doing, and how do we make sure that we can make that happen? At the end of the workshop, we also spent some time coming back to the question around the structure. What kind of structure is needed to make sure that the network is sustainable? So these were the pieces that we covered at the next workshop. So starting with that comparison between the RAC themes and priorities and what the network could be doing in terms of these categories, we really wanted to make sure that there is a match there. And it looks like there's a lot that the network can be doing to help really support those priorities. And so we set up a board, a mirror board, which we would love for you to engage with and add your comments to. And we included on this board both the priorities of the RAC, and also we started adding on to it. So if you're doing any kind of related work at those that relates to those 13 themes of the RAC and also 50 categories of the network, we would love for you to get on the board and just let us know what it is that you're doing that relates to this work. So that's the first ask that we have for you. And I think the link is now available in the chat. Okay, so once we did that and learned from what is currently being done and thoughts about what the network could do, we gathered for each category. We took some time and asked participants to think about initiatives that they want to work on. So we recognize that there's a lot that can be done, as was quite apparent from that slide I showed you with all the sticky notes. But we really wanted to be able to distill it into what are the actual initiatives that participants are able to work and they're willing to join in on. And so we ended up with 9 key initiatives, and those are in front of you. So again, some of those look like they're repeating the categories, but now we were really trying to hone in on what it is that we want to do. So the importance of supporting a shared data life cycle, continuing the work of the Research Advisory Committee, creating and maintaining a web-based Nexus portal or a clearinghouse, using current forums to share information. So some of that is the LunchMAR that we have every month. Also a suggestion to leverage the International Symposium on Managed Aquifer Recharge, which is coming up in April 2020. Developing a communication plan so we can identify audiences, messaging, and tools to share information about FloodMAR. And part of it was a suggestion to develop a speaker bureau. And as it relates to project implementation, to develop a set of decision support questions for FloodMAR project development and implementation. So these were the 9 key areas, initiatives that people felt were good next step for the network to think about focusing on. And once we came up with this shorter list, it was really important for us to think about individually, how do we all want to engage to make it happen? And so we asked each participant to spend some time doing some soul searching and thinking about how do they see themselves supporting these initiatives. So for each initiative, we have this concentric circle diagram that asks participants to ask themselves, is this an initiative that I feel I want to help coordinate and propel the initiatives to see it through? Do I want to be an anchor to this initiative? Is this something that I want to actively collaborate on and sharing the work that needs to be done to advance the initiatives? Am I an ambassador who can help share the information about this work with other networks that I'm connected to. And also think about whether we are beneficiaries of this kind of work. And so as this work gets done under each of the initiatives, do I see a connection to the work that I'm already doing? And potentially maybe this work is not directly related to what I'm actively doing, but this is important enough that I want to be informed and understand the progress and the outcome of working through these initiatives. And so we ask all the participants to really identify where they see themselves, recognizing that it's not a static thing, that potentially we may see ourselves as a collaborator, and but maybe that would, excuse me, maybe that would change over time, and maybe we see ourselves as a beneficiary, but as we think about the work that we're doing and how it relates to the initiatives, we may move elsewhere. So here's an example of what that looked like when we ask people to share where they see themselves in. And you can see that in some cases, people put themselves in between categories, and we were happy to see that because we want people to recognize that this is really something that is meant to be shifting and for people to see themselves moving within those to support the various initiatives. One thing that you can see here that there's nobody sitting in the middle in the anchor spot. And we had a bit of a conversation about that at the meeting, recognizing that many saw themselves as very strong collaborators and were willing to be the ones who may propel an initiative forward, but the activity around coordination and administering and initiatives was difficult for most people, and we actually took that perspective and input and came back to it later when we talked about the structure of the network and thinking about how we can provide some structure and network support so collaborators and others who are wanting to move forward with initiatives get the support that they need to be able to move forward. So based on these conversations about what engagement could look like for everyone who participated, we end up with, once we re-examined the suggested initiatives, we actually went back and narrowed it down to 4 key initiatives that we felt we were all ready to move forward with. And so those were thinking about how we can continue and follow up on the work of the Research Advisory Committee efforts in terms of thinking about checking in on how priorities that were identified by the RAC, what progress has been made, do we need to update the gaps on that were identified, thinking about how to move forward with creating and maintaining a web-based portal or a clearinghouse and what that needs to include, and then leveraging ongoing forums and making sure that we participate and engage with those, and developing a communication plan. So we had cohorts who joined around these 4 key initiatives, and we asked them to identify the next activities that they feel would need to happen between now and our next workshop, which will be sometime in the summer. And most of the first, for most of these, the 4 initiatives, the initial steps include convening the first cohort meeting, identifying the work plan, what needs to be happening, and some of the initial research and thinking about how to actually work through the initiative. So really looking forward to seeing what will happen between now and the next workshop. And we are looking to provide some support, some facilitation support, so we can make sure that these groups convene and are able to start work on these initiatives. So this is where the second ask comes in. we invite you all to join this effort. I know some of you on this call are already have committed some support to these initiatives, and there's an opportunity for you to go again to the Mira board and let us know if you want to be included in any of these engagement levels, as we just shared with you, whether it is an anchor or a collaborator or an ambassador or somebody who wants to be informed of the process. You can let us know how you want to engage with this work. So I think that's all I was going to say about the next steps in terms of what the network could be doing moving forward. And the remaining part that we just started discussing at our last workshop, which we will be following up next, is thinking about the network structure a little bit. And so there were 3 key areas that participants suggested we need to focus on in terms of participation, thinking about what coordination would look like, how would administering and coordination of the network will happen, how do we want to ensure broad participation, so what kind of outreach we need to be doing to continue and diversify the expertise and participation in the network. Thinking about the network process itself and giving it a little bit more structure, thinking about what kind of MOU or a charter possibly we could develop to sustain the network, thinking about touch points, how we can connect with network participants on a regular basis, what that would look like, and how do we integrate with other resource management programs. So that will be coming next in terms of really shaping the process around the network. And then as some of the initiatives have already are going to be starting to look at, is thinking about a listserv or some type of a roster that identify the skills of network members, thinking about a portal where we can that can provide some structure for collaboration and presence. So we're going to take all this information coming into our next workshop, and looking forward to anybody who would want to join the upcoming workshop or the initiatives. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Jenny, so you can talk a little bit about next steps. And as we wrap this up, I really want to hear from some of those who have participated in this workshops, if they want to weigh in about the process and their takeaways from it. We'd love to hear from you. So I'll turn it over to you, Jenny.
Thanks, Orit. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Mike and Orit, for kind of catching us up to where we've been. And so now we're going to look forward and what's coming next. And I think there's really kind of 3 main pathways that we're pursuing. It's getting ready for the next workshop that Orit mentioned will be this summer, probably June or July. How do we connect us as the network better? We've got some informal forums, but how do we make sure that we know how to reach out to each other and progressing our initiatives? So the 4 initiatives that Orit mentioned. So for the workshop, we really want to kind of dive into how do we sustain the network, and part of sustaining that network is identifying a network administrator and a network steering committee. You know, we've said since the beginning of network development that DWR would help bring the network together, and with, you know, CCP and support from Santec, you know, we would provide the vessel for which the network meets, and early coordination. But as Mike and Orit laid out, you know, the network is brought together by the participants. And so, you know, we want to make sure that the participants have a say in who the network administrator and who the network steering committee participants are, and people can volunteer to fulfill those roles. And as part of the next workshop and sustaining the network in the long term, what are we jointly committing to? So is there a need to pull together a draft charter or a memorandum of understanding? And what is, we're kind of getting and giving to the network collectively. And so under Connecting Us Better, we'd like to put together a network listserv that allows you to send emails to the network and get input on whether you're finding you're trying to find partners for a project, or as Tim Parker put in the chat, a call for papers. So just giving folks a way to connect with each other. We also want to develop that internal collaboration portal to provide some structure for the network and sharing information. And we've got our 4 initiatives to progress. And so we've shared in the chat the link to the mural board. If you're interested in signing up for any of the initiatives as an anchor, collaborator, or just someone who wants to stay informed, please do so we can start getting together on our cohort meetings. As Orit mentioned, there are initiatives that have strong collaborator groups but don't have an anchor yet. And we did hear feedback that there are people who would be willing to be an anchor, but they don't want the administrative burden of bringing people together and identifying meeting times. And CCP through Orit and her team have expressed a willingness to provide that administrative support. So if having that extra support brings you into the anchor position, please sign up or let Orit and I know. We definitely welcome more interest from the anchor side, and it doesn't have to be one person. It could be a team of anchors. So the last couple bullets, we're going to create a roster of the FloodMAR network. As we do that, we'll probably set up a survey that also allows you to identify what areas that you could speak in as part of our speaker bureau. I'm sure I'm not the only one who spends a little bit of time every week talking to other organizations that are trying to put panels together and either being invited on a panel as DWR reps or other organizations that we've collaborated with and who would be good representatives. This gives us a forum to allow people to go and see who the different experts are in different areas, who might be able to speak on panels and participate in different events. And so we thought that would be a helpful add to the network. And lastly, we see LunchMAR as part of the network. And so by participating in LunchMAR, you're informally part of the network and maybe the group in the informed, but we definitely, as always, appreciate your involvement. And we'll see you at the next LunchMAR in May. And I think we have one final poll question before we open up for questions.
Yes, and I just want to say that this poll question is really shared in jest.
As I said, if you're here today, we think you're part of the network.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, this is going on right now, and surprisingly, all those who are responding said, "Yes, I'm in." So, but you're just really wanting to open it up both to, if you have any questions about the process or suggestions, and if you participated in kind of seeing this process to date in its kind of totality, any thoughts that you have or anything important you've taken from these conversations, we'd love to hear from you. And Abdul, I see you have your hand raised, so I'll you can go first. Go ahead.
Thank you. I've been missing some of the FloodMAR these sessions, so it was really nice to get a complete update. And it seems that this idea has gained a lot of strength or gaining strength. So I'm really happy to be part of this network. But having said that, I was wondering, and Kamir probably can chime in if my idea has any merit. In terms of Kamir and I, we are involved in a different process related to sort of delivery of government services. And that also involves a network, which is called State Agency Collaboration Network. But to make that effective, there is a parallel sort of idea, which is also being done as part of that process. And so I'm suggesting maybe this is worth considering, something like FloodMAR Skills Bank. So the Skills Bank is an inventory of the people who are in the FloodMAR network. What is their expertise? For example, I'm just throwing out some ideas related to hydrology, hydraulics, soil science, maybe integrated groundwater and surface water modeling, reservoir operations modeling, and all the activities, science or policy related to FloodMAR. I think it will be, for me at least, it will be fascinating to discover amongst us what are the skill set which can actually, in future, if we really do a collaborative project where that skill set or skills bank can help us to design that collaborative project. Thank you.
Thanks, Abdul. I think you're validating one of the next step items of creating that kind of listserv and listing of expertise that are part of the network that can be leveraged. So that's great. Thank you.
Yes, that definitely resonates with things we've heard others say, the idea that the roster should include both contact information and the things that you're most interested in being contacted about. And that kind of skills inventory, I think that's a great way of framing it. I don't think we've heard those particular words before, so that's really great. Thanks, Abdul.
Yeah, this is Kamyar. Just at Abdul's invitation, I'll chime in and support his suggestion and maybe go so far to say maybe at a future LunchMAR, we could set up a demonstration of the skills bank that's being piloted for this state agency collaboration network as part of a cross-pollination.
That's great. Thanks, Kamyar.
Any other thoughts and questions out there? We invite people to join in the chat or unmute themselves or turn on their camera. We'll provide a few moments for additional questions, and we can always dive into announcements or anything else that folks want to flag for the LunchMAR group. It doesn't have to be basketball for those of us that were on the beginning of the call.
I would actually really be interested in hearing from those who have participated in those two workshops, of kind of their takeaway about in terms of the kind of the messiness of a process where it's really driven by participants and thinking through through a process where the network is really developed by what it is that we're willing to do. Really curious to hear what participants think about the process.
So this is Abdul again. I just want to say this, and I know Kamyar also raised his hand, but just a crazy idea came to my mind, so I'm going to express it. The crazy idea is, can our network, as an entity, so to speak, very informal entity, suggest to a body which has funding resources? I'm just thinking about Water Foundation and or California Water Data Consortium, that that we want to investigate sort of the multifaceted dimensions of a FloodMAR project, and therefore sort of suggest a proposal which could be multi-state agency, multi-federal agency, and involve the academia as well. But it's not going to be a full-blasted, big pilot, but in a very sort of small area, investigate, for example, as part of the FloodMAR, research, group activity, some of the things we identified, basically investigate those with help from academia, and maybe, a lot of students could be, just do a nice little FloodMAR demo project. Thank you.
Thanks, Abdul.
Any other thoughts and comments? Well, we can open up the time to announcements. I know there's an announcement in the chat for a call for papers. And so there's a special Marr edition of the Groundwater Journal, and there's a call for papers with a link to that information for anyone who's interested in preparing a paper. This is probably a good forum to also see if there's any, make connections and see if there's any folks interested in collaborating. I also just saw in my email that the Water Commission is doing another call for information about interesting storage projects or interested applicants under their water storage investment program. So it looks like there's some remaining money available. That meeting's coming up in April on the 22nd. So if anyone's got projects ready that might be eligible for Prop 1, Chapter 8, water storage investment program funding, definitely tune into that there are groundwater projects that are eligible for that funding pot. So I see Adam's hand up.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Good to see all of you. Just wanted to let you know that the ISMAR 11 call for abstracts will be going out next week on Tuesday. So keep an eye out for that, and sign up for the email to stay in touch with what's going on at ISMAR 11, but save the date, April next year, and get your abstracts ready. So, and then I'm going to also volunteer to be the anchor for this initiative to leverage ISMAR for FloodMAR. I think it's a great opportunity, and I'm happy to anchor that effort.
Thanks, Adam.
Great, thanks, Adam. And that is in Long Beach, correct?
Yes, that's correct. So close to home here for us in Southern California.
Nice.
Great. Mike, I see your hand up. Or was there a question, Camille? I think I heard
I was just gonna suggest, because we're in the discussion period, if we could stop sharing the slide, then we can get into gallery view so we can see each other.
Good suggestion.
That's great.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I'm on the technical committee for American Water Resources Association, that puts out the Impact magazine quarterly, and they're currently working on a issue entirely focused on groundwater management in California. I was able to connect some of our FloodMAR network folks into the editors of that magazine, and I believe there's a FloodMAR related article being drafted. So FloodMAR is going to get some prominence in American Water Resources Association alongside a lot of other California groundwater management articles in an upcoming issue. So I'll keep everybody apprised, and when that goes out, when that issue is finally released, I think it's going to be the May-June issue. So I'll keep everybody apprised.
Orit Kalman, just a logistical issue. When I try to turn on my video, it says that it's blocked by the host.
Oh, Danica. please share with us.
Camille, how did you offend Danica?
There you see, she can fix everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was wondering, Cameo, after you asked everybody to turn their video on while yours wasn't on.
I couldn't.
I couldn't. All right, well, Danica can fix everything. Anybody else have any?
I have one last plug.
Okay.
We want to fill out the calendar for LunchMAR's moving forward in 2021. So if there's a topic that you'd like to see, let us know. We can coordinate with the speaker, or if you'd like to speak and volunteer for a upcoming LunchMAR, shoot me an email, add it in chat, or feel free to speak up right now. But we are looking to fill out the remainder of the year for LunchMAR speakers.
Hey, Jenny, I'm not going to present this paper, but I'm throwing this title for other people to consider. Can we succeed implementing Sigma without FloodMAR?
Ooh.
Isn't that a short article that just says no?
That's a brief.
Well, the rhetorical question. I have an announcement. You may have heard the Maven and the Roundtable of Regions and others have been putting on workshops to promote further or better collaboration between IRWM and GSAs and other collaboratives. And the next one is going to be on May 10th. And the topic of discussion is going to be groundwater recharge. So when that information, the actual webinar announcement comes out, we'll make sure we share it with those on the FloodMAR /network listserv so that you might want to participate in that effort. And I could see a lot of folks that tune into that workshop are people who maybe without knowing it are strong candidates for participating in a FloodMAR network.
Great, thanks, Camiar. I do see we're at 1:30, so this is generally the time we say goodbye. But I know people do hang out for a little while longer on these calls usually. So those that are signing off, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in May.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.